This teaching today that I'm doing is on Wormwood or Apophis. Let me talk about some facts. When you talk about this issue, it is a very, very important issue to talk about because there's a fact. An asteroid, NASA has named this asteroid Apophis. And I want to talk about the name a little bit later on because it's a very odd name for an asteroid, a very meaningful name to name this asteroid Apophis. It's either going to hit the Earth or come very close to the Earth on Friday, April the 13th, 2029. It's 1,200 feet wide. That's 4 football fields wide. It's traveling at 28,000 miles an hour, and it weighs 20 million metric tons. Now, this is a massive asteroid that is coming our way, and the scientists are saying it's going to come within 20,000 miles of the Earth. Now, many of the satellites around the Earth are farther away than that. So this is close enough to knock satellites out of the sky. But I'm going to show you some videos coming up here in just a minute that are going to show you a dream and some predictions that a friend of mine, he's now with the Lord, made about Apophis hitting the Earth. And so, but it's a fact that this asteroid is on its way here, and it's going to be here in, a little over 3 years. Another fact is around the middle of the tribulation, an asteroid will hit the Earth and do tremendous damage. Now, in Revelation chapter 8, the first angel sounded, and hail and fire followed, mingled with blood. And they were thrown to the earth, and a third of the trees were burned up, and all the green grass was burned up. Then there's a second trumpet. The second angel sounded, and something like a great mountain burning with fire was thrown into the sea. And a third of the sea became blood. And a third of the living creatures in the sea died, and a third of the ships were destroyed. Then the third angel sounded, and a great star fell from heaven, burning like a torch, and it fell on a third of the rivers and on the springs of water. The name is called Wormwood. A third of the waters became wormwood, and many died because it made them bitter. Then the fourth angel sounded, and a third of the sun was struck, a third of the moon, and a third of the stars, so that a third of them was darkened, and a third of the day did not shine, and likewise the night. So this is one event. And so when you see the 4 angels that are sounding here, their trumpets, and these 4 events. See, when an asteroid hits the Earth, there are 4 phases of an asteroid hitting the Earth. The first is, as it enters the Earth's atmosphere, it creates intense heat. That's why it says a third of the green grass, a third of all the trees and everything were burned up at the beginning. This intense heat. The second thing is it begins to separate. A part of Wormwood hits the ocean, a part of it hits the land, the springs of waters and the fresh water. And so it separates. Then it does devastation. It hits the sea. A third of the sea life dies. It hits the earth. All this damage is done on the earth. It separates, it devastates. Then it darkens the sky. And it says a third of the sun was darkened. The sky became dark. After an asteroid has hit the Earth, you have all this ash and debris that's thrown into the atmosphere, and the sky becomes dark. So this is one event, and these 4 trumpets that are sounding are announcing now this asteroid that's about to hit the Earth. Now, whether it's Apophis or whether it's something else, it's going to happen. Asteroids pop up all the time, and they don't know where all the asteroids are. And so this could be a different asteroid than Apophis. However, Apophis is this massive asteroid, and I'm going to tell you more about it in just a minute. But I want Tom Horn, a dear friend of mine, end times expert, he had a dream, and he shared this dream years ago, and it concerns Apophis. And I want to play this video right now, and I want you to watch Tom. Now, Tom, sharp guy, and I knew him for a long time. We did a lot of work together. And so this is not a goofy guy. And so I want you to watch this video now, and I want you to hear what he says now about Apophis.
So approximately 1 year ago now, went to bed, same scenario, 2 a.m. in the morning, and all of a sudden, I woke up into this panoramic, almost like a film that's playing out in front of me, and I'm in the middle of it. And what I first thought I was looking at was a giant fiery dragon, deep up in space, moving, undulating like a serpent, racing towards the earth. Then suddenly my point of view changed, and now I was up above the object, and I could see that it was not a fiery dragon, but rather it was a giant space rock, an asteroid. And the way it was turning as it was moving through the space and the light of the sun was glistening off of the elements of the stone. It only gave it the appearance that it was moving back and forth. Now, all of a sudden, I'm back on Earth again. And now I am surrounded by literally tens of thousands of people, and we are on a mountain. And we are running for our lives. And people everywhere are screaming and begging God to deliver them from what is coming. And I turn and I look over my shoulder, and I can see this fiery mountain, basically, this giant rock entering into the atmosphere, burning as it comes through the atmosphere, breaking apart as it comes through the atmosphere. A huge part of it strikes the ocean, a huge part of it strikes the earth, and all of a sudden, the earth is shaking so violently that none of us can stand up. We're all knocked off of our feet. It was the most horrific thing. I can hear this terrible sound as if the earth is literally cracking, like the mantle of the earth is breaking apart. And now I'm looking back over my shoulder again, and this giant wall of water, just an enormous tsunami, hundreds of feet tall, coming up over the top of this mountain. And again, everybody's trying to run. Then these, what felt like large hands, come down underneath my arms and lift me up into space, and now I'm looking down upon the earth. And here's an important part about this entire thing. I'm not a scientist. I don't know what would happen if an asteroid of that size were to impact the earth. But what I saw, I later found to be exactly how scientists describe what would transpire. With the waters boiling beneath this giant burning rock, the aerosol coming up off of that, entering into the upper atmosphere, setting in motion hurricane activity, the second part hitting the earth, causing a volcano to begin erupting.
So what you saw is what would actually happen, but you didn't have the knowledge of what would actually happen from a scientific viewpoint, but you still saw it.
Yeah. And to use street lingo, it freaked me out.
Well,
when I started doing the research, it really freaked me out.
But I'll tell you the thing that strikes me even stronger. You heard a name.
Yeah.
What was the name?
So as this is playing out, I'm terrified. All of a sudden I wake up and said, I almost fell out of bed on my face. I mean, I had cold chills all over me. I'd never seen anything this vivid or terrifying. I start writing it down, but then all of a sudden it was as if a voice. I don't know if this was just in my head or if it was an audible sound in the room, but it was as if a voice spoke, and it said one word: Apophis.
So Tom has this dream, and he wakes up. Of course, he hears the word Apophis, and all these people are running, and he's running. And so then you say it's a dream, and that's exactly right. It's a dream. It's not the Bible. I'm not saying it's absolutely true. I'm just telling you it was his dream. But now I want to show you another video of Tom Horn. Listen to what he's saying now about the timing and how it has to do with 2025. Now, Tom has been with the Lord for several years. So this was a video from years ago. Listen to what he's saying now about Apophis in 2029, but how it affects 2025. Watch this video.
This question, how the Jewish feasts are connected to the arrival of Apophis. Well, I happen to be doing programs last year in the old studio with Derek Gilbert. And while we were talking about Apophis and the Wormwood prophecy, I made the case that if Apophis is the fulfillment of the Wormwood prophecy, Revelation chapter 8, that would happen in the middle of the Great Tribulation period. And then I made this point. I said, so if you are, and most evangelical Christians, whether they know it or not, are dispensationalists who believe in a 7-year tribulation period, if that's what you believe, and if Apophis is Wormwood, then with that being in the middle of the tribulation period, you would count backward 3.5 years to arrive at the beginning of what is called the 7-year Great Tribulation period. Well, while I was saying that, Derek and Sharon, who were interviewing me, Derek is sitting across and he's got his iPad or whatever it is he's using, his MacBook, and he had opened a Jewish calendar, a Hebrew calendar, on his device. And he went 3.5 years earlier, and he literally turned pale because 3.5 years earlier, before the impact of Apophis, to the day is the middle of the Feast of Tabernacles. Now, we probably don't have enough time for me to explain all the ways in which end times prophecy experts connect the Feast of Tabernacles and the Feast of Trumpets with the beginning of the 7-year tribulation period and the second coming of Jesus Christ. But just suffice to say this, it not only falls into the middle of the Feast of Tabernacles, but literally on the 7th day of the Feast of Tabernacles in 2025. So just 5 years from now. Why is that important? Because the 7th day of the Feast of Tabernacles is when the ancient Hebrews, get this, sacrificed 7 bulls in commemoration of God delivering them from all of the gods of the nations, but in particular, delivering them from the gods of Egypt, and in particular, delivering them from Apophis, the ancient Egyptian god of chaos. Literally, that day in antiquity is 3.5 years to the day from when Apophis is going to strike the earth, is when the Hebrews will be celebrating how God in antiquity delivered them from Apophis. So is God going to deliver his own people 3.5 years earlier? 10 days before that is the Feast of Trumpets, which is also connected to the second coming of Christ. Why? Because the Apostle Paul drew a parallel to the Feast of Trumpets when he said, at the last trump, so during the Feast of Trumpets, the shofar is sounded 100 times. Paul says, at the last trump, the dead in Christ shall rise. Then we which are alive and remain shall be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air. But get this, in 2025, 120 days before that is the Feast of Pentecost. And in biblical numerology, the number 120 is the number of the end of mankind. God said in Genesis, my spirit will not always strive with man, for his years will be 120. And that set the pattern for that to be the representation of the end of mankind. Of course, Moses was also a parody of that, in that he died at 120 years of age. So all of these highly important Jewish feasts that are connected to the second coming of Christ are absolutely connected 3.5 years earlier to from the impact of Apophis, which I believe is the fulfillment of the Wormwood prophecy of Revelation chapter 8. One more final thing, because we totally are not going to have time to talk about this. The ancient Essenes, the inhabitants of Qumran. Now, lots of people, they know the Essenes from the Dead Sea Scrolls that were discovered there in the 1940s. What they don't know, and by the way, this has only been unearthed in the last 50 years. Archaeologists have also recovered prophecies that the Essenes made, and even material that illustrates who the Essenes were. 150 years before the birth of Jesus Christ, the Essenes began prophesying about the first advent of the coming of the Messiah. They said that he would come at a time when a king named Herod would be a king and he would turn evil. They said he would die in the year 32 AD, which is what scholars believe exactly happened. They said he will die not only for Jewish people, but he will be sacrificed for the Gentiles as well and give birth to an age of grace that would extend for a period of 2,000 years. The list literally goes on and on. We're going to produce a documentary film in 2021 about all of this. But why am I bringing this all up now? Because they also prophesied this, that mankind, now this was over 2,000 years ago, these highly accurate prophets called the Essenes who lived in Qumran, they predicted that mankind will enter its final age. Guess when? In the year 2025.
So this is very, very significant if it's true. And I just want to say if it's true, because again, this is Tom Horn talking about a dream that he had, but he hears this word Apophis. Didn't know what it was at the time. Apophis, as he was saying, refers to an ancient Egyptian deity, a giant serpent demon of chaos and darkness that cannot be stopped, also referred to as the Great Serpent. I mean, why would NASA, of all people, years ago, when they realized that this huge asteroid is approaching the Earth, why would they use that name to describe this asteroid? I think that's an odd thing. And again, I don't want to read too much into this, but I also don't want to ignore it. Of course, Tom is a friend of mine, I think the world of. Okay, so he has this dream. It's not scripture, but it's interesting. And like he's saying, the name, you know, when they're celebrating the feast, when the Jews were celebrating the feast, and specifically now he's talking about the Feast of Tabernacles, they're celebrating God taking them out of Egypt and delivering them from the gods of Egypt, and even specifically the god Apophis. And so this year, the fall feasts are coming up. Remember now, the Feast of Israel are a prophetic reference of the future. We know that's true because Jesus was crucified during the Feast of Passover. He was buried during the Feast of Unleavened Bread. He was resurrected during the Feast of First Fruits. And 50 days later, the Holy Spirit fell and the church was birthed during the Feast of Pentecost. So the first four feasts were literally fulfilled to the day. And when God told Israel to have these feasts, he called them holy convocations. The word convocation means dress rehearsal. And so you're having a dress rehearsal. When they were killing the lambs and they were wiping the blood of the lambs on the doorposts of their house and going through all the feast of the feast of Passover, that was a dress rehearsal for the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. And it was literally fulfilled to the day. And then the second one happened to the day next, third, fourth. Now we have three feasts, fall feasts. There were four spring feasts. There are three fall feasts. The three fall feasts are coming up this year, the Feast of Trumpets, which I believe some year could be fulfilled by the rapture of the church. This is coming up this September 22nd.